We've seen a huge decline in the number of traditional strikers over the past few decades. Many would argue that this is a bad thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. After all, football has evolved into a more tactical sport with teams prioritizing possession and passing over simply hoofing the ball up to a target man. In this video, we'll explain why there are fewer traditional strikers playing the game today, as well as some of the reasons why this might not be such a bad thing. Let's start off by taking a look at some figures. Between 2010 and 2020, there was a 43% drop in the number of goals scored by traditional target men in Europe's top 5 leagues. To put that into context, during that same time period, the overall number of goals scored across those same leagues only went down by 6%. This means that the decline in old-school strikers has been significantly steeper than the decline in goals. And even though teams still need players who can score goals, they're clearly less likely to deploy a traditional target man to do so. But what exactly defines a traditional striker? Well, these are players whose primary responsibility is to get on the end of crosses and head the ball towards goal or lay it off to a teammate who can shoot. They tend to be big, strong players with their back to goal and rely on their physical attributes rather than skill or technique. Back in the day, these types of players were a feature of most teams, but nowadays they are far less common. So why is this? Well, for starters, modern defenders are bigger, stronger, and better at dealing with crosses than their predecessors. So target men often find themselves out-muscled and out-jumped. Back in the day, a long ball forward was often the best way to break down a stubborn defense. But nowadays, there are very few defenses that are truly stubborn. And even if there were, a long ball up to a target man is extremely risky, as it's likely to be intercepted or dealt with comfortably by the defense. In addition to this, many teams press extremely high up the pitch nowadays, and this leaves very little time for target men to get their heads on crosses. Even if they do manage to get a good connection, the ball often ends up in the hands of an alert goalkeeper. And if the goalkeeper isn't alert, there's always the offside trap to worry about. Not only are target men less effective than they used to be, but they're also less fashionable. Football is constantly evolving, and these days there's a greater emphasis on possession and passing football. Teams want players who can bring the ball down with their feet and create something out of nothing rather than simply hold the ball up and bring others into play. This isn't to say that target men have no place in modern football. There are still plenty of teams who utilize big, strong forwards who can bully defenders and make them uncomfortable. However, these players are more of a handful than the stereotypical target man of old. For example, think of someone like Romelu Lukaku rather than Peter Crouch. Target men like Lukaku are still capable of scoring lots of goals, but they're also involved in the build-up play and link up with their teammates far more often. In addition to the tactical tweaks, there's also a more practical reason as to why fewer target men are being deployed. The introduction of the away goals rule in European competition has incentivized teams to be more cautious on the road. As a result, we're seeing fewer away goals being scored, which in turn leads to fewer target men being utilized. After all, if you're playing away from home, you don't want to leave yourself exposed at the back by playing with a lone striker. Although the old-fashioned target man may be a dying breed, this isn't necessarily a bad thing for the game as a whole. Football has evolved, and the target man was a product of the game's previous era. Had the game not evolved and adapted, it would stagnate and become boring to watch. Now, of course, there will always be a place for big, strong strikers in the modern game. However, we're now more likely to see these players dropping deep and getting involved in the build-up play rather than simply making runs into the box. Thanks for watching.